Widow found an old boat stuck in the sand. But what was inside surprised everyone. Emily Peterson was walking alone on the beach in Santa Barbara, California, trying to forget the weight of grief she had carried for 2 years. The storm from the previous night had left debris scattered across the sand, and that's when she spotted something that made her heart race. There was an old fishing boat with its blue and white paint peeling, stranded among the palm trees. It wasn't common for vessels to reach that part of the beach, but it was the sound that made her run toward the hull. Desperate meows echoed from inside the boat, growing weaker, as if someone was calling for help. Emily climbed with difficulty up the side of the boat, holding onto the rusty ropes. What she found inside left her speechless. 4 tiny kittens, no more than a few weeks old, were huddled in a wet wooden box. They were shivering from cold and hunger, and their meows were almost inaudible. Emily picked them up carefully, feeling their little cold bodies warm in her hands. But as she bent down to pick up the box completely, she noticed something strange on the boat's floor. There was a loose plank, different from the others. When she moved it, she found a hidden compartment. Inside, wrapped in thick plastic, were documents that seemed to have been protected from the seawater. Emily grabbed the package with trembling hands, and when she opened it, she almost dropped the kittens. They were boat registration papers, and the owner's name made her swallow hard. Robert Peterson, her late husband, the man she had been married to for 15 years, whom she thought she knew completely, had owned that boat, and he had never at any point mentioned it to her. Emily sat on the wooden bench of the boat, still holding the kittens, as she flipped through the documents with one hand. There were photos too, some yellowed with time. All of them showed Robert smiling next to 4 children, right there on that same boat. The children wore identical clothes, as if they were uniforms, and they looked happy. What disturbed her most was recognizing some of those clothes. She had found them in the attic of the house after Robert passed away, stored in an old suitcase that he said contained childhood mementos. But now it was clear they weren't clothes from when he was a child. They were clothes he had bought for other children. Emily climbed down from the boat carrying the kittens and the documents, her mind spinning in 1,000 directions. Robert always said he spent Saturdays fishing with friends, but she had never questioned why he never brought fish home, or why he came back with the smell of children's soap on his clothes. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. As she walked across the sand toward her house, an elderly neighbor approached. Mrs. Grace had lived in the area for over 50 years and knew all the secrets of the coast. Emily, dear, what beautiful kittens. Where did you find them? In a boat stranded there on the beach. Mrs. Grace, have you ever seen that vessel before? The elderly woman adjusted her glasses and looked in the direction Emily pointed. But of course, that's Robert's boat. I didn't know you knew its story. Emily felt her legs weaken. What story? Oh, my dear, your husband was a saint. Every Saturday, he took the children from the orphanage out for boat rides. He said everyone deserved to feel the sea breeze on their face at least once in their life. He had been doing it for years, long before you got married. Orphanage? Which orphanage? Hope Haven, the one at the entrance to town. It's almost closing now, poor things. But back then it was full of children. Mister, Robert would show up there every week, taking 4 or 5 out for a walk, always the shyest ones, the ones nobody wanted to adopt. Emily could barely process that information. Robert had never mentioned volunteer work, let alone with children, and he always said he didn't want kids, that they had a good life with just the 2 of them. Mrs. Grace, why did he stop? I'm not sure. One day he just didn't show up anymore. That was about 5 years ago, more or less. The children were very sad. They asked about him every week. Emily thanked her neighbor and headed home, her mind buzzing with questions. When she arrived, she placed the kittens in a box with warm blankets and gave them some warm milk. While they ate, she spread the documents out on the kitchen table. Besides the boat papers and the photos, there were purchase receipts, diapers, powdered milk, children's clothes, toys. All dated from times when Robert claimed to be working late or traveling on business. Emily remembered questioning some of these absences, but he always had a convincing explanation. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Jennifer, her only close friend, calling to check on her. "Emily, you sound different. Did something happen?" "Jen, I need to tell you something, but you have to come over. I can't talk about this on the phone." 40 minutes later, Jennifer was sitting in Emily's living room, watching the kittens play as she listened to the whole story. Her expression shifted from surprise to concern as Emily recounted each discovery. "Are you sure you had no idea about any of this?" "None, Jen. During 15 years of marriage, he never mentioned this boat, these children, this work at the orphanage. How is it possible to hide something like that for so long?" "Maybe he was afraid you wouldn't approve. Some men think they need to protect their wives from certain responsibilities." "But they were children. It wasn't anything wrong. Why hide it?" Jennifer picked up one of the photos and examined it carefully. "These children look really happy. Look at their smiles. And Robert looks genuinely happy here too, in a way I've never seen in photos of you two." Jennifer's words hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. It was true. In the boat photos, Robert had an expression of pure joy that she had rarely seen during their marriage. He had always been affectionate and present, but there was a lightness in those images that contrasted with the seriousness he maintained at home. "Jen, I need to go to the orphanage. I need to understand what happened. Do you want me to come with you?" "I'd rather go alone first." "But can you watch the kittens?" "I don't want to leave them alone yet." Jennifer agreed, and Emily prepared for the journey to Hope Haven. The institution was about a 30-minute drive from the beach, in a more remote area of the city. Along the way, she tried to imagine what the conversation would be like with whoever was in charge of the place. The orphanage was a simple 2-story building with yellow-painted walls that had already faded. There was a small courtyard in front, with some old toys scattered about. Emily parked and took a deep breath before ringing the bell. A woman about 60 years old, with greying hair pulled back in a bun, answered the door. Her eyes were kind, but there was a deep sadness in them. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" "My name is Emily Peterson. I was the wife of Robert Peterson. I'd like to talk about the work he did here." The woman's face instantly lit up. "Emily, Robert talked about you so much. Please come in. I'm Sister Margaret, the director here. I've always wanted to meet you." Emily entered a simple hallway with children's drawings taped to the walls. The smell was a mix of cleaning supplies and home-cooked food, and she could hear children's voices coming from somewhere in the building. "Sister Margaret, I need to be honest with you. Robert never told me about his work here. I found out by chance today, and I'm trying to understand why." The nun stopped walking and turned to Emily with a look of surprise. "What do you mean he never told you? But Robert was always talking about how understanding and caring you were. He said you supported his work, even though it was so demanding." "Demanding? His work was demanding?" "Oh, yes. Robert came here every week for almost 10 years. He took the children on boat rides, taught them how to swim, brought books, toys. Some of our kids had never seen the ocean before they met Robert." They sat down in a small room that served as an office. Sister Margaret poured weak coffee into mismatched cups as she continued talking. Robert had a special affection for the more withdrawn children, the ones who had been rejected several times in adoption processes. He said every child deserved to feel special at least once. Emily felt a lump growing in her throat. The man the nun described was different from the Robert she knew. Not that he was bad at home, but there was a dimension to his personality she had never witnessed. "Sister Margaret, why did he stop coming?" The nun sighed and looked out the window, where some children were playing in the yard. "It was about 5 years ago. Robert showed up here one morning, very nervous, saying he needed to take a break from his volunteer work. He said there were family matters he needed to sort out, but that he would be back soon." "Family matters?" "That's what he said. But he never came back. The children asked about him for months, especially the 4 he took on outings the most. 4 children. Yes, siblings. They arrived here together after their parents had an accident. Robert grew very attached to them, and they to him. When he stopped coming, it was like they had lost a father for the second time." Emily remembered the photos she had found. "Are these siblings still here?" "No. We managed to place them with a relative a few years later. Their maternal grandmother came forward and took custody. They still live here in town." Could you give me their contact information? Sister Margaret hesitated. Emily, may I ask why this is important to you now? How long has Robert been gone? 2 years. And it's important because I found out I didn't know my husband as I thought I did. I found this boat today on the beach, with abandoned kittens inside, and there were documents that belonged to Robert with it. I need to understand why he hid this part of his life from me. The nun nodded understandingly. The siblings are named Olivia, Ethan, Sophie, and Mason Johnson. They live with their grandmother, Mrs. Dorothy, in the downtown neighborhood. You can find them at 47 Maple Street. But Emily, if you're going to talk to them, be gentle. They've already suffered a lot. Emily thanked her and prepared to leave, but Sister Margaret called her back. Emily, before you go, there's something you need to know. Robert left something here for the children shortly before he stopped coming. He said it was to be given to them when they turned 18. Olivia, the oldest, turned 18 last month, but we couldn't locate the family. What did he leave? A sealed letter and a key. He said the key would open something important that was kept in a safe place. Emily felt her heart race. Sister Margaret went to an old cabinet and took out a yellowed envelope with the name Olivia Johnson, written in Robert's familiar handwriting. Take this to her. Robert always said he would come back to explain everything in person, but since that's no longer possible... Emily took the envelope, feeling the weight of the key inside it. Another piece of a puzzle she didn't even know how to start putting together. The address in downtown led her to a narrow street with simple, well-kept houses. Number 47 was a small building painted light green, with a front garden where an elderly woman was watering plants. Emily parked and approached the low fence. "Excuse me, are you Mrs. Dorothy Johnson?" The elderly woman looked up. She was a woman with completely white hair, sun-tanned skin, and eyes that carried stories of a whole lifetime. "Yes, I am. How can I help you?" "My name is Emily Peterson. I was married to Robert Peterson. I came here because I wanted to talk to your grandchildren about him." The watering can slipped from Mrs. Dorothy's hands, falling to the ground with a dull thud. "Robert? The Robert from the boat?" "Yes, ma'am. I found out today that he knew your grandchildren from the orphanage, and I wanted to speak with them." Mrs. Dorothy opened the small gate, her eyes shining with emotion. "Please, come in. The children will be so happy. They still talk about Robert to this day." The inside of the house was simple but cozy, old but well-maintained furniture, and family photos scattered on the walls. Mrs. Dorothy led her to a small room where 4 young people were gathered around a table, doing some kind of craft. When Emily entered, they all looked up. It was as if the photos she had found on the boat had come to life. They were the same children, now grown up. Olivia must have been about 18, with wavy brown hair. Ethan seemed about 16, tall and thin. Sophie, who must have been about 14, had large, expressive eyes. And Mason, the youngest, appeared to be 12 and wore a shy smile. "Everyone, this is Emily, Robert's wife," announced Mrs. Dorothy. The silence that followed was broken by Olivia's voice. "Emily? The real Emily? You know me?" Ethan stood up, still holding a small wooden boat he was painting. "Robert talked about you all the time. He said you were the most amazing woman in the world, that you cooked better than any chef, that you had a smile that could brighten any day." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. While it was comforting to know that Robert spoke highly of her, it was painful to realize she didn't know this version of him. "May I sit with you? I have some things to discuss." Sophie pulled up a chair, and Emily joined the group. On the table, she could see they were painting small wooden boats, all identical to the one she had found on the beach. "You make these little boats? It's a way to remember Robert," explained Mason, the youngest. "He taught us how to make them. He said whenever we missed him, we could make a little boat and imagine we were sailing with him." Emily took out the envelope Sister Margaret had given her. "Olivia, Robert left this for you at the orphanage, to be given to you when you turned 18. The young woman took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter and a small but ornate golden key. "May I read it out loud?" asked Olivia, looking at her siblings. They all agreed, and Emily prepared to finally understand a bit more about the man she had been married to. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Olivia unfolded the letter, written in Robert's careful handwriting. My dear Olivia, if you're reading this, it means the time has come for you to know the truth about some things. This key opens a safe hidden in my boat, under the floorboards of the main cabin. Inside is something I always wanted to give to you and your siblings, but circumstances prevented me. I know you must be wondering why I stopped coming to the orphanage. The truth is, I was going through a difficult time in my marriage. Emily, my wife, had been trying to get pregnant for years, and the doctors told me I had problems preventing it. She didn't know, and I didn't have the courage to tell her. When you arrived at the orphanage, I saw in you the family that Emily and I could never have, but I felt guilty for loving you like my own children, while my wife dreamed of having children of her own. I thought it would be unfair to keep visiting you when I should have been focusing on solving our problems. I know I'm being a coward by writing this in a letter, instead of explaining it in person, but by the time you're reading this, I probably won't be here anymore to give these explanations. I have health problems that I'm hiding from everyone. In the safe, you'll find money I saved over all these years. It was meant to be a graduation gift for each of you. There are also documents about a piece of land I bought with you in mind. My dream was always to build a house where you could live together after leaving the orphanage. Olivia, you were always too mature for your age. Take care of your siblings, and if you ever find Emily, tell her about our time together. She deserves to know that, even without biological children, I experienced fatherly love through you. With eternal love, Robert. The silence in the room was heavy. Olivia was crying silently, still holding the letter. Ethan had stopped painting and was staring at his hands. Sophie got up and went to hug her grandmother, who was also crying. Mason, the youngest, was the first to break the silence. Emily, didn't you know that Robert wanted to have children? Emily wiped her own tears before answering. I knew he wanted to. We tried for years, but he never told me about the health problems. He always said we should be patient, that it would happen at the right time. He was protecting you, said Mrs. Dorothy, speaking for the first time since Emily had arrived. Robert came here a few times after the children came to live with me. He was clearly suffering. He said he felt torn between two worlds and didn't know how to reconcile them. Olivia raised her head, wiping away her tears. Emily, do you want to come with us to get what's in the safe? I think Robert would have wanted you to know everything. Emily nodded, still processing all the revelations. They arranged to meet at the beach the next morning, since it was already getting dark. On her way back home, Emily stopped at the market and bought cat food and some small toys. When she arrived, she found Jennifer on the couch with the 4 kittens sleeping in her lap. How did it go? Jennifer asked quietly so as not to wake the kittens. Emily told the whole story, from the conversation with Sister Margaret to Robert's letter. Jennifer listened in silence, occasionally shaking her head in amazement. Emily, do you realize what this means? Robert wasn't cheating on you or hiding anything bad. He was trying to protect your feelings. But Jen, he robbed me of the chance to know these children, to be part of this beautiful story. What if I could have helped? What if we could have adopted them when their parents died? Would you have wanted that back then? Emily stopped to think. 2 years ago, when Robert died, she was completely focused on her own grief. She had isolated herself from everyone, sunk in depression. Would she have been able to care for 4 traumatized children? I don't know, Jen. Maybe I wasn't ready then. But now what? Now I feel like I've found a purpose. These kittens appeared in my life at the same time I found out about the children. It can't be a coincidence. The next morning, Emily woke up early. The kittens were more active, playing with the toys she had bought. She prepared milk for them and checked if they were healthy. They seemed to be recovering well from being abandoned. At 9 in the morning, she was at the beach waiting for the Johnson family. They arrived a few minutes later, Mrs. Dorothy walking slowly while leaning on Ethan's arm. Olivia carried a backpack with tools that might be needed to open the safe. The boat was exactly where Emily had left it. Getting on it with 5 people was a challenge, but they managed to settle in. Olivia found the key that Robert had mentioned in the letter, and they located the loose floorboard. When Ethan lifted it completely, it revealed a compartment larger than Emily had imagined the first time. Inside it was a metal box the size of a small suitcase. Olivia inserted the key and opened the safe. What they found inside left everyone speechless. There were bundles of money organized in envelopes, each with the name of one of the children. There were also documents for a piece of land and blueprints for a house, hand-drawn by Robert. But what caught their attention the most were the notebooks. Mason picked up one of the notebooks and opened it. It was full of notes about each of them, observations about their personalities, fears, dreams, academic progress. Robert had meticulously documented each child's life for years. "Look at this," said Sophie, pointing to a page in her notebook. "He wrote that I had nightmares for 2 weeks after watching a horror movie, and that the only thing that calmed me down was when he sang that boat song." Ethan was flipping through his own notebook, smiling. "He wrote here that I wanted to be a veterinarian because of the abandoned dog we found on the beach. I remember that day. Robert said if I studied hard, one day I could help all the abandoned animals in the world." Emily picked up one of the notebooks and flipped through it randomly. Robert's dedication to every detail of the children's lives was impressive. He had recorded achievements, worries, emotional development. It was as if they were really his children. On one of the pages, she found something that made her swallow hard. "Today, Olivia asked when I was going to take her to meet Emily. She said she wanted to thank her for lending her husband to take care of orphan children. I had to leave the room to cry. How do I explain to a 10-year-old that I'm lying to the woman I love? How do I say that I'm afraid she'll leave me if she finds out I can't give her children?" Mrs. Dorothy, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Emily, there's something the children don't know, but I need to tell you. Robert came to visit me a few weeks before he passed. He was very sick, more than he appeared. He said he had prepared everything for the children, but his biggest regret was not being honest with you. Did he say anything else? He said you were the strongest woman he had ever known, and that if he had told you the truth from the beginning, the two of you could have built a beautiful family with these children, but that now it was too late." Olivia stood up and walked over to Emily. "Emily, I know this might sound strange, but I'd like to get to know you better. Robert talked about you so much that I feel like you're part of our family." "And you are part of mine now," replied Emily, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. They spent the rest of the morning on the boat, sharing stories about Robert and discovering connections none of them had noticed before. Emily talked about the life she led with Robert, the trips they took, the dreams they had. The children talked about the boat rides, the swimming lessons, the life advice. When they got off the boat, Mrs. Dorothy pulled Emily aside. "Emily, I need to tell you something important. I'm sick. Cancer. The doctors say I don't have much time." Emily felt the world spin. "Mrs. Dorothy, You don't need to say anything. I just want you to know that I'm worried about the children. Olivia just turned 18 but hasn't found a steady job yet. Ethan is in his last year of high school. Sophie and Mason are still very young. When I'm no longer here, you don't need to worry about that right now." "Yes, I do. You came into our lives at just the right time, Emily. Robert must be arranging everything from up above." That afternoon, Emily returned home with more questions than answers. Jennifer had gone out, leaving only a note saying she'd be back that evening. The kittens ran to greet her, and she realized she was already growing attached to them. As she fed them, she thought about Mrs. Dorothy and the children's situation. The money Robert had left would be enough to support them for a while, but what about after that? How would 4 young orphans manage to support themselves alone? The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Olivia. "Emily, sorry to bother you, but something happened. I just got a call from the lawyer who handled Robert's affairs. He said he needs to speak with me urgently about an inheritance." "Inheritance? Did Robert leave something for you in his will?" "I don't know. The lawyer didn't want to give details over the phone. He scheduled an appointment for tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon at his office. Would you like to come with me?" Emily didn't hesitate. "Of course. Let's figure this out together." The next day, Emily picked up Olivia, and together they went to the office of Attia Richard Thompson, the lawyer who had taken care of Robert's business. He was a man of about 50, with greying hair and a serious expression. "Mrs. Peterson, I'm sorry for your loss of Robert, and you must be Olivia Johnson. Please have a seat." They settled into the leather chairs of the elegant office. Attar Richard opened a thick folder on the desk. Olivia, Robert filed a private will a few months before he passed away. He left specific instructions for me to contact you when you turned 18. What kind of instructions? Robert left the boat in the name of the 4 Johnson siblings. You are the sole legal owners of the vessel now. Emily and Olivia looked at each other, surprised. But why would he do that? Asked Emily. According to his instructions, the boat represented the childhood you lost, and he wanted you to have something tangible to remember the happy moments you shared together. Olivia was visibly moved. Is there anything else? Yes. Robert also bought a property in your names. It's about 6 miles from the beach in a rural area. He had started the process to build a house there. A house. 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a spacious living room, a large kitchen. The plans are all here. Robert invested a lot of money in this project. The foundation was already laid when he passed away. Attar Richard handed the papers to Olivia, who flipped through them with wide eyes. Attar Richard, how much would it cost to finish this construction? Robert left enough money to complete the project. In fact, he left more than enough. If you choose to build a simpler house than the one designed, there would be resources left over to support yourselves until you achieve financial independence. Emily watched Olivia process all that information. The 18-year-old suddenly found herself responsible for decisions that would affect the whole family. Can I consult my siblings before making any decisions? Of course. But there's one condition that Robert set. What condition? The 4 siblings need to stay together. If at any point they separate, the assets return to the estate and will be donated to the orphanage. Emily felt a tightening in her chest. Robert had been clever. He knew the greatest wealth those children had was in the bond they shared, and he created a way to ensure it would be preserved. After the meeting with the attorney, Emily and Olivia walked silently to the car. The young woman seemed lost in thought, carrying the folder with the documents. Olivia, are you okay? Emily, I don't know if I'm ready for these responsibilities. Taking care of my siblings, making decisions about the house, money. Just yesterday I was just an 18-year-old orphan. You're not alone in this. And Robert knew very well what you were capable of, otherwise he wouldn't have entrusted all this to you. But what if I make the wrong decisions? What if I end up hurting my siblings? Emily stopped walking and turned to Olivia. Can I ask you a question? What's your biggest fear in all of this? Olivia thought for a moment. My biggest fear is losing my siblings. They're the only family I have left. If I mess up, I might end up separating us. And what's your biggest dream? To have our own home, where we can be a real family without depending on the kindness of others. A place where Mason can play in the backyard, where Sophie can have sleepovers, where Ethan can study to be a vet without worrying about money. Then you already have your answers. For every decision you make, use these 2 criteria. Will it bring us closer as a family? Will it bring us closer to our dream of independence? Olivia smiled for the first time since they left the office. Emily, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. Did you want to have children? The question caught Emily off guard. It was something she had tried not to think about since Robert died. I always did. Robert and I tried for years, but it never happened. After he died, I thought that door had closed forever. What if that door opened in a different way? What if you could have children who didn't come from your womb, but who came into your heart just the same? Emily stopped walking again, this time with tears welling in her eyes. Olivia, what are you saying? I'm saying that Robert always said you would be a wonderful mother, and I'm saying that maybe we met for a reason. Mrs. Dorothy is sick, and we're going to need someone. You lost Robert and you're alone. Maybe we can form a different kind of family, but a real family. Emily hugged Olivia right there on the sidewalk, crying with emotion and fear at the same time. It was a possibility she hadn't dared to consider, but one that now seemed not just possible, but necessary. But Olivia, you and your siblings barely know me. How can you be sure it would be a good idea? Robert taught us to recognize good people, and he taught us that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, it's about care, it's about love. And since yesterday when you showed up at our house, I feel like Robert is trying to fix a mistake he made in life. What mistake? the mistake of not introducing the two parts of the family he loved. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. That evening, Emily invited the entire Johnson family to dinner at her house. She wanted them to get to know the environment where she and Robert had lived better, and she wanted to observe how they interacted in that space. Mrs. Dorothy arrived leaning on Ethan, who had grown a lot in recent years and was now taller than his grandmother. Olivia brought a homemade pie she had made especially for the occasion. Sophie carried a small plant seedling as a gift, and Mason was visibly excited about the prospect of seeing the house. The kittens were an immediate hit. Mason sat on the living room floor and let them climb his legs, laughing every time their tiny paws lightly scratched his clothes. Sophie picked up the shyest of the four and started talking to him in a low voice, as if he were a person. During dinner, Emily observed how the family interacted. Ethan had the habit of cutting his grandmother's food into smaller pieces without her asking. Olivia poured water for everyone before serving herself. Sophie and Mason automatically shared anything they particularly liked. They were small gestures, but they revealed years of mutual care. "Emily, this house is exactly as Robert described," commented Sophie. "He said you had a gift for making any place feel cozy." "Robert talked about our house to you?" "Yes, he did," replied Ethan. "He described every room, every picture on the wall. He said you bought this house thinking about filling it with children running through the halls." Emily felt a tightness in her chest, but this time it wasn't just sadness. It was also hope. After dinner, they gathered in the living room to talk about the plans for the house that Robert had started building. Olivia spread the blueprints on the coffee table, and everyone leaned in to examine the drawings. "Look here," Mason pointed. "Robert drew a room for each of us, but he also drew an extra room. What would that be for?" Mrs. Dorothy adjusted her glasses and looked closer. Knowing Robert, it was probably for Emily. He always dreamed of uniting you in some way. "Mrs. Dorothy, do you really think Robert planned all this?" asked Emily. "My dear, Robert was a man who thought about the future. When he first came here to meet the children, he said he felt they would be important in his life. And when he stopped coming to the orphanage, it wasn't because he stopped loving them. It was because he loved you too much to keep lying." Olivia stood up and went to the window, looking at the ocean view that Emily's house offered. "Emily, can I make you a proposal?" "Of course." "What if we built the house that Robert planned, but with some modifications? What if we created a space where you could live with us?" Emily felt her heart race. "Olivia, are you sure about this? It's a very big decision." "I'm sure," Olivia replied firmly, "and I'm sure my siblings are too." Ethan, Sophie, and Mason looked at each other and nodded in unison. "But you barely know me. How can you be so sure?" Mason, the youngest, stood up and walked over to Emily. "Emily, Robert always said that when you truly love someone, you feel it right here." He pointed to his own chest. "Since you showed up yesterday, I've felt like you were already part of our family. We just didn't know it yet." Emily hugged Mason, feeling that this 12-year-old child had a wisdom that many adults lacked. "But there are so many practical things to consider. I would have to sell this house. You would have to leave your grandmother's house." "Emily," interrupted Mrs. Dorothy, "can I speak with you in private?" They went to the backyard, where Emily kept a small garden that Robert had helped plan. "Emily, I need to tell you something I didn't say in front of the children. My illness is more advanced than they know. The doctors gave me at most 6 months." Emily felt her legs weaken. "Mrs. Dorothy." "No, let me finish. Since I found out about the diagnosis, my biggest worry has been what would happen to the children. Olivia is of age, but she's still too young to take on all that responsibility alone. When you came into our lives, it was as if Robert had sent an angel. But I don't know if I'm the right person for this. I've never raised children, especially children who have already been through so much trauma. Emily, do you think Robert knew how to raise children when he started visiting the orphanage? Do you think I knew how to raise 4 orphaned grandchildren when they arrived at my house? We learn by doing, with love. And what if I fail? What if I can't give them what they need? What if you give them exactly what they need? What if they give you exactly what you need too? Mrs. Dorothy took Emily's hands. Dear, I saw how you looked at those children today. I saw how they looked at you. I saw how you fit together naturally, like puzzle pieces that finally found their places. Don't let fear stop you from being happy. When they returned to the living room, the 4 children were sitting on the floor playing with the kittens. The scene was so natural, so familiar, that Emily had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. Everyone! She got their attention. She got their, I have a proposal for you. They all turned to look at her. How about we spend the next few weeks getting to know each other better? You can come here whenever you want. You can bring the kittens to play in the backyard. You can help me make decisions about building the house. And at the end of this period, if everyone still thinks it's a good idea, we can think about becoming a real family. Olivia stood up first and went to hug Emily. Emily, I already know the answer, but if you need time to be sure, I'll respect that. I already know too, said Ethan, but I agree to spend more time together just so you feel more at ease. Sophie and Mason ran to join the group hug, and Emily found herself at the center of a group of people who until 2 days ago were complete strangers, but who now felt like family. In the weeks that followed, Emily's house transformed. Every day, at least one of the children came to visit her. Mason came in the morning before school to feed the kittens and tell her how he had slept. Sophie appeared at lunchtime, always bringing some food she had prepared with her grandmother. Ethan arrived in the late afternoon to study at the kitchen table, saying he could concentrate better there. And Olivia came in the evening after working her part-time job at the market to talk about plans for the new house. Emily discovered that each of them had unique and well-defined personalities. Mason was curious and talkative, always full of questions about everything. Sophie was artistic and sensitive, loved to draw, and had a natural talent for cooking. Ethan was studious and responsible, already showing genuine interest in veterinary medicine and spending hours reading about animals. Olivia was mature and organized, a natural leader, but also carried the weight of feeling responsible for everyone. During this period, Emily also spent time at their house getting to know Mrs. Dorothy better and understanding the family dynamic they had built. The elderly woman was an extraordinary person who had raised 4 orphaned grandchildren with much love and few resources, always prioritizing unity and affection above anything material. One afternoon, Emily was helping Olivia organize the inheritance documents when she found something she hadn't noticed before. Among the papers was a sealed envelope with, "For Emily," written in Robert's handwriting. "Olivia, have you seen this?" "Yes, I have. It was among the documents the attorney gave me. I think Robert left it for you, too." Emily opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a 3-page letter, written in the familiar handwriting of her late husband. "My dear Emily, if you're reading this, it means the paths I laid out have crossed as I hoped. I know you must be confused, hurt, maybe even angry with me for hiding so many things. But I need you to understand the reason behind every decision I made. When I met Olivia, Ethan, Sophie, and Mason, it felt like the universe had given me the gift I wanted most, the chance to be a father. But at the same time, it felt like it gave me the biggest guilt of my life, because I knew you dreamed of being a mother as much as I dreamed of being a father. I didn't tell you about the impossibility of us having biological children because I was afraid you would leave me. I didn't tell you about the children because I was afraid you would feel betrayed by me experiencing fatherhood away from you. And the more time passed, the harder it became to tell the truth. When I found out I was sick, I realized I had made the biggest mistake of my life. I deprived you of knowing 4 amazing people who could have filled the emptiness we felt. I deprived the children of knowing the most extraordinary woman I've ever met. And I deprived all of us of forming the family we always dreamed of. Emily, the children are special. Olivia has the most generous heart I've ever seen, but she needs to learn to take care of herself too. Ethan is smart and determined, but sometimes he's too hard on himself. Sophie is pure sensitivity, but she needs someone to help her channel her talents. Mason is pure joy, but he needs structure to develop well. They need you, Emily, but more than that, you need them. I know you must be feeling lost since I left, questioning what your purpose is now. They are your purpose. Being their mother is the most important mission you can have. I'm not asking you to take on this responsibility out of obligation or pity. I'm asking you to consider that maybe fate has a funny way of fixing our mistakes. Maybe you and the children found each other at exactly the right time. I know Mrs. Dorothy doesn't have much time left. I know the children will need a home, and I know you have so much love to give. If you decide to open your heart to them, I'm sure you'll be the best mother they could have. In the boat safe, besides the money for the children, there's an envelope marked for our home. It's money I saved thinking about the family we always wanted to form. Use it to build your dream home. Use it to give them the childhood they deserve. Use it to be happy. I love you forever, Robert. Emily finished reading the letter with tears streaming down her face. Olivia, who had stayed by her side respectfully, took her hand. Emily, are you okay? I am. In fact, I'm better than I've been in a long time. That night, Emily made her decision. She called Jennifer to talk about her plans, prepared a special dinner, and invited the whole Johnson family for an important conversation. When everyone was gathered in the living room, Emily stood up and took a deep breath. Family, because that's what I'm going to call you from now on. I have something to say. Everyone watched her attentively. In the past few weeks, you've given me something I thought I had lost forever. A purpose. You've given me a reason to wake up happy in the morning, to plan for the future, to believe that there are still good things to come. Mason smiled, and Sophie took her grandmother's hand. Olivia, you asked me if I would like to have children in a different way. The answer is yes. I would very much like to be your mother, if you'll have me as your mum. The silence that followed was broken by Mason, who ran to hug Emily. Of course we want to. We're already a family. We just needed to make it official. Ethan and Sophie joined the hug, and Olivia was the last. But when she came, she hugged Emily tightly. Emily, are you sure it's a huge responsibility? I'm sure. I don't know if I'll be perfect, but I know I'll love you and do my best to take care of you. Mrs. Dorothy, who was watching the scene from the couch, wiped tears from her eyes. Robert was right. You were meant to be a family. In the months that followed, much changed in everyone's lives. Emily sold her house and used the money, along with the inheritance Robert had left, to finish building the new home. The design was modified to include a suite for Mrs. Dorothy, who agreed to spend her final months surrounded by the family she had helped raise. The construction became a community project. Neighbors and friends showed up on weekends to help, learning the family's story and being charmed by their unity. Jennifer became a sort of aunt to the children, always appearing with gifts and funny stories. Olivia got a better job at a clothing store downtown and started taking a business administration course at night. Ethan was accepted into a pre-college program for low-income students and was preparing to apply for a scholarship in veterinary medicine. Sophie enrolled in an art class at the public library and discovered a talent for ceramics. Mason found a group of friends at his new school and finally had space to be a child. The 4 kittens, which had been the catalyst for all those changes, grew up and became inseparable companions to the children. Each one adopted one. Olivia kept Shadow, a black kitten with green eyes. Ethan chose Thunder, a white and grey tabby cat. Sophie became attached to Honey, a very affectionate yellow kitten. And Mason adopted Captain, a black and white cat who loved to play. The house was completed 3 months before Mrs. Dorothy passed away. She had time to see every room decorated, to sit in the backyard admiring the fruit trees they had planted together, and to cook in the spacious kitchen she had always dreamed of for her children. In the last month of Mrs. Dorothy's life, Emily arranged everything so she could stay at home, surrounded by love and care. The elderly woman died in peace, knowing her children had a mother who would love them unconditionally. The funeral was simple but moving. The entire community that had known Mrs. Dorothy over the years came to say goodbye. Emily held each of the children's hands firmly, silently promising Mrs. Dorothy that she would be worthy of the trust she had placed in her. After the funeral, when they were all at home gathered in the living room, Olivia broke the silence. Emily, thank you for not letting us go through this alone. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your family, Emily replied. Now we're 5 forever. 6, Mason corrected. Robert is part of it too. He started all this. You're right. We're 6. and a very close family. 1 year after moving into the new house, Emily was in the backyard picking fruit when she heard familiar voices approaching. Olivia came running along the trail leading to the house, carrying an envelope in her hands. "Emily! Emily!" The response from Ethan's college arrived. The whole family gathered on the porch to watch the letter being opened. Ethan had taken the entrance exam for veterinary medicine at a public university in the state capital, about 2 hours from home. With trembling hands, Ethan opened the envelope. When he read the result, his face lit up. "I passed! I got the full scholarship!" The shout of joy that echoed through the house startled the cats and made the neighbors come out to see what was happening. Emily hugged Ethan tightly, proud of the determined young man he had become. "Emily, how am I going to manage? The university is far away. I'll have to live there during the week. We'll figure it out. Maybe you can come back on weekends, or maybe we can arrange to visit you regularly. The important thing is that you've achieved your dream. But what about the will's condition? If I separate from my siblings?" Emily smiled and picked up the document she had prepared for this occasion. "Ethan, I spoke with the attorney. Temporary separation for study reasons doesn't void the will. You're still part of the family, even studying far away." That evening, the whole family gathered to plan what the new phase would be like. Olivia was already working as the store manager and was finishing her course. Sophie had discovered she had a talent for teaching art to younger children and was giving private lessons. Mason was doing well in school and had become the official caretaker of the family's cats. "You know," said Emily, looking at the 4 people she now called her children, "Robert would have been so proud of you." "He would have been proud of you too," replied Olivia. "You did exactly what he expected. You turned us into a real family." "No," corrected Emily. "You were already a family. I just found my place in it." 2 years later, Emily was in the kitchen preparing Sunday lunch when she heard the sound of a car arriving. Through the window, she saw Ethan getting out of a taxi, with a suitcase in his hand and a huge smile on his face. "Surprise!" he shouted, coming through the front door. The whole family rushed to greet him. Ethan's visits were always a reason to celebrate, but this time he seemed especially excited. "Guys, I have news. I got an internship at the veterinary clinic here in town. I'll be able to come back home and continue my studies at the same time." Emily felt her heart fill with joy. The family was coming together again, stronger and more united than ever. During lunch, everyone shared their updates. Olivia had been promoted and now managed 3 stores in the chain. Sophie was organizing an art exhibition with her students. Mason had joined the school's soccer team. And Emily had decided to take a teaching course, inspired by her experience raising 4 young people. "Emily," said Sophie during dessert, "do you remember that day you found the kittens on the boat? As if it were yesterday. Why? Have you ever thought that if you hadn't walked on the beach that day, none of this would have happened?" Emily looked around the table, seeing the 4 people who were now the reason for her existence, the cats playing in the backyard, the house full of life and love. "Actually, Sophie, I think all this was meant to happen. Robert planned every detail, even the boat washing up on the beach exactly where I walked every day." "Do you think he knew you walked there?" asked Mason. "I'm sure. Robert knew me better than I knew myself. He knew that after he died I would seek comfort by walking on the beach, and he knew that if I found abandoned kittens, I wouldn't be able to resist helping them." Olivia smiled and raised her glass of juice. "Then let's make a toast to Robert, the man who managed to bring us together even after he was gone." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Robert," they said in unison. "And to our family," added Emily. 5 years after the day Emily found the boat on the beach, she was sitting on the porch reading a book when Mason came running up the path. "Emily, Emily, I have amazing news." "What is it, son?" "Remember that school essay contest about family? Of course you wrote about our story. I won. I got first place." Emily hugged Mason, now a 17-year-old young man, tall and full of dreams. "And you know what the prize is?" he continued, excited. "What is it?" "A trip for the whole family. We'll be able to travel together for the first time." That night, when the whole family was gathered to celebrate Mason's achievement, Emily looked around and realized how their lives had transformed. Olivia was now 23 and engaged to a young man she had met in college. Ethan, at 21, was in his final year of veterinary school and had already been accepted for a residency at the same clinic where he interned. Sophie, at 19, had been accepted into an arts school in the capital, but had decided to take correspondence courses to stay close to the family. And Mason was preparing for his college entrance exams, dreaming of pursuing a career in journalism. "Everyone," said Emily, getting everyone's attention, "I have something to tell you too." "What is it?" asked Olivia. "Remember Robert's boat? The one that's been abandoned on the beach all these years?" "Of course," replied Ethan. "Why?" "I've decided to restore it. I want to turn it into a memorial for Robert, but also into a symbol of our family. I thought we could use it for Sunday outings like Robert used to do with you when you were little." The four exchanged glances and smiled. "Emily," said Mason, "that's the best idea you've ever had. But there's one condition," Emily continued. "I want you all to help me. I want it to be a family project." "When do we start?" asked Sophie. "How about tomorrow?" And so, the following Saturday, the whole family gathered on the beach where it all began. The boat was more deteriorated than Emily remembered, but it still had a solid structure. Ethan, with his technical knowledge from college, assessed what would be needed to restore the vessel. Olivia organized a list of materials and budgets. Sophie began sketching how they could paint and decorate the boat, and Mason took on the task of documenting the entire process, creating a restoration diary. It took them 6 months to complete the work. Every weekend, the entire family gathered on the beach to work on the boat. Neighbors and friends came by to help, and soon the project became a community event. When they finally finished, the boat was unrecognizable. The blue and white paint had been renewed, but now there were also colorful details painted by Sophie. Olivia had sewn new cushions for the seats. Ethan had fixed all the technical equipment, and Mason had created a commemorative plaque with the names of the whole family, including Robert and Mrs. Dorothy. The first official outing took place on a sunny Sunday. The whole family boarded, along with Jennifer and some close neighbors. Emily took command of the boat, using the lessons Robert had written in one of the notebooks they found. As they sailed along the coast, Emily watched the 4 people she now called her children. Olivia was at the bow, her hair in the wind, taking pictures of the scenery. Ethan was explaining to Mason how the boat's engine worked. Sophie was drawing in her notebook, capturing the moment. "Emily," Mason shouted over the noise of the engine, "thank you for finding those kittens." Emily smiled and looked up at the sky, where some white clouds formed interesting shapes. "Thank you, Robert," she murmured softly. "Thank you for giving me the family I always dreamed of." When they returned home that afternoon, Emily noticed a peace in her heart that she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just the peace of someone who had overcome a loss, but the peace of someone who had found a new purpose, a new reason to live. That night, when everyone was asleep, Emily went out to the porch and looked at the stars. In the distance, a cat meowed, probably one of the kittens from her original 4 cats, which had now spread throughout the neighborhood. She thought about all the coincidences that had led to that moment. The boat washing up exactly on the beach where she walked, the kittens choosing that spot to take refuge, the documents being preserved despite the moisture, the perfect timing of each meeting, each revelation, each decision. Perhaps they weren't coincidences after all. Perhaps it was just Robert, watching over the family he loved even after he was gone. Emily smiled at the stars and walked into the house, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, and new moments to build with her family. A family that had been born from the unlikely union of a lonely widow and 4 orphans, brought together by 4 abandoned kittens and a boat full of secrets. A family that Robert had dreamed of and that fate had made real. 10 years after the day she found the boat on the beach, Emily was in the kitchen preparing a special lunch when she heard excited voices outside. Through the window, she saw a car pulling up, and her heart filled with joy as she recognized who was getting out. It was Olivia, now 28, married and 6 months pregnant. Beside her, Her husband Michael was helping unload bags from the car. Behind them, another car arrived. It was Ethan, now a graduate working as a veterinarian at a wildlife clinic, accompanied by his girlfriend Sarah. "Emily!" shouted Olivia, running to hug her adoptive mother. "How are you?" "Very well, my dear. And how is my little grandson in there?" "Very active. I think he knows we're at Grandma's house." Sophie appeared at the kitchen door, now a young woman of 24 who worked as an art teacher at the municipal school. She had stayed home after finishing her studies, saying she wanted to be close to family. "Where's Mason?" asked Ethan, looking around. "He went to pick up Emma from the bus station." "You're going to love meeting her," replied Emily. Mason, now 22, was studying journalism at the university and had met a young woman named Emma, who was also studying communications. She was the first girlfriend he had brought home to meet the family, and everyone was curious. "Emily," said Olivia, sitting at the kitchen table, "Michael and I had an idea for the baby's name." "What is it?" "If it's a boy, we want to name him Robert, in honor of our heart's father." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. "Olivia, are you sure?" "Absolutely sure. Robert gave us a family. It's only right that our son carries his name." At that moment, Mason arrived with Emma, a cheerful and friendly young woman who was immediately welcomed by the whole family. During lunch, each shared their news, and Emily realized how uniquely their lives had intertwined. Ethan talked about his work saving injured animals. Sophie showed pictures of the art exhibition she had organized with her students. Mason told about his internship at the local newspaper, where he was writing a series of articles on unconventional families, and Olivia shared plans for the baby's arrival. "And you, Emily?" asked Michael. "How are things here?" "Very well. I finished my teaching degree and am thinking about doing a postgraduate course. And I have some news too." "What?" everyone asked in unison. "I received an offer to write a book about our story. A publisher from New York heard about our family through an article Mason wrote and wants me to tell our complete story." "Emily, that's wonderful!" exclaimed Sophie. "Are you going to accept?" asked Ethan. "Only if you all agree. The story is ours, not just mine." "Of course we agree," said Olivia. "Our story can inspire other families." After lunch, everyone headed to the beach where the restored boat awaited them. It was a family tradition to go for rides whenever everyone was together. As they sailed, Emily watched her family and felt a deep gratitude. Olivia sat with her hand on her belly talking to the baby. Ethan and Sarah watched dolphins that had appeared near the shore. Sophie sketched the landscape as she always did. Mason and Emma chatted excitedly about their university projects. "Emily!" shouted Mason over the noise of the engine. "Remember when you said Robert had planned everything?" "I do. I think he's still planning. Emma told me she lost her parents when she was little too, and that she always dreamed of having a big, close-knit family." Emily looked at Emma, who smiled shyly. Another piece fitting into the endless puzzle Robert had started. When they returned home that afternoon, Emily sat on the porch with Olivia while the others organized things for the trip back. "Mom," said Olivia, using the word that now came naturally, "thank you for everything you've done for us. Thank you for letting me be your mom." "Mom, can I ask you a question?" "Of course, honey. Have you ever regretted it? Ever thought how your life would be different if you hadn't adopted us?" Emily thought for a moment, watching Ethan playing with the cats in the yard, Sophie teaching Emma to paint, Mason helping Michael carry the bags. "Olivia, do you want the truth? I can no longer imagine my life without you. It's as if you've always been my children, and all the time before I met you was just preparation for the moment we became a family." "I feel the same way. It's like real life began when you showed up at our house that day." That night, after everyone had left, Emily was alone in the house that now seemed too big. But it was a different loneliness from what she felt before meeting the children. It was the temporary loneliness of someone who has a family that will always return. She picked up the laptop and began writing the first chapter of the book she had decided to accept. It began like this. "It was an ordinary morning when I walked along the beach and found a stranded boat. Inside it, 4 abandoned kittens changed the course of my life forever. But this isn't a story about cats. It's a story about how love can take forms we never imagined, and how a family can be born from the most unlikely encounters. Emily wrote late into the night, remembering every detail, every emotion, every discovery that had marked her journey. When she finally went to sleep, she was sure Robert would be proud to see how his love story had transformed into many love stories. 6 months later, when the book was published, Emily organized a special launch on the beach where it all began. The whole family was present, including little Robert, who had been born 2 weeks earlier and slept peacefully in Olivia's arms. Neighbors, friends, people from the community who had followed the family's story over the years, everyone was there. Even Sister Margaret, now older but still active, had come to celebrate. "This book," Emily said during her launch speech, "isn't just the story of our family. It's the story of how true love never dies, it just transforms. Robert is no longer physically with us, but his love continues creating connections, uniting people, forming family." She looked at the boat anchored near the beach, where a new plaque had been added. Robert Peterson, father, husband, and family builder. His love sails eternally. Robert taught us that family isn't just blood. It's choice, it's care, it's unconditional love, and it's the promise that, no matter what happens, we'll always be together. When the event ended and everyone said their goodbyes, the family was alone on the beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Emily," said Ethan, now with a beard and a more mature appearance, "there's one thing I've always wanted to ask you." "What is it, son?" "Do you think Robert knew you were going to write this book? That our story would inspire other families?" Emily looked toward the horizon, where the sun was slowly disappearing into the sea. Ethan, knowing Robert as I did, I'm sure he knew. He always said the best stories were those that touched people's hearts and inspired them to believe in love. Mason, who was holding Emma's hand, smiled. "So our mission isn't over yet, right? If the book inspires other families to form like ours, Robert will keep creating families even after all these years." "That's the idea," replied Emily. "Love is contagious. When one family is happy, it inspires other families to be happy too." Sophie approached Emily and took her hand. "Mom, thank you for giving us a beautiful story to tell. Thank you for giving me a beautiful life to live." When they returned home that night, Emily found a letter in the mailbox. It was from a woman from another state who had read about the book in a magazine. The letter said, "Dear Emily, I read about your family and was deeply moved. I've been a widow for 3 years, and 2 months ago, I found an abandoned girl in front of my gate. I was afraid to adopt her, but your story gave me courage. Now it's just the 2 of us, and we're very happy. Thank you for showing me that love can appear in the most unexpected ways." Emily smiled and stored the letter in a special box, along with other similar letters she had received since the family's story began to be shared. They were stories of widows who had adopted children, of orphaned children who had found families, of people who had discovered that family is much more than blood ties. All these stories were part of Robert's legacy. Every family that formed, inspired by their story, was an extension of the love he had planted on that boat so many years ago. Emily turned off the house lights and went to sleep, knowing that tomorrow she would wake up to another day with her extraordinary family, a family that had started with 4 abandoned kittens and turned into a family tree of love that spread far beyond their borders. A family that proved every day that happy endings are just new beginnings in disguise, and that true love has the power to turn any chance encounter into an inevitable destiny. End of story. Emily closed the book of her own story, knowing that every page had been worth it. From the kittens on the boat to the grandchildren yet to come, every moment had been a gift from the man who loved so deeply that he managed to create a family even after departing. And so, in the waves gently lapping the shore of Santa Barbara, Robert's whisper echoed eternally. Love never dies. It just finds new ways to manifest. Now tell us what you thought of this touching story. Do you believe love can create families in such special ways? Leave your opinion in the comments. We love reading every sincere message you send. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that will move you. Thank you so much for your company.